12,000 years old. I want you to really think about that for a second. We're talking way before pottery, before metal, before writing even existed. And yet, there's a massive hilltop temple sitting right there in southern Turkey that absolutely destroys every single historical textbook we've ever written.
And get this, it was built by hunter-gatherers. Literally, people who, according to our perfectly neat historical timelines, were simply not supposed to be capable of any sort of organized monumental construction. No way.
But then, after carving these insane pillars that weighed more than a standard school bus, they did something truly inexplicable. They deliberately buried the entire thing under tons of rubble and earth. And they just walked away.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are taking a seriously wild journey through archaeological sites that completely shatter our understanding of the human story. I'm talking about hidden civilizations swallowed up by the jungle, buried by volcanic ash, or just purposely erased from history. Civilizations that prove everything we thought we knew about our past is shockingly incomplete.
Section 1. The timeline is broken, redrawing the map of human progress. Okay, so here's the standard model taught in pretty much every university class. The steps are super clear, right? First comes basic survival, and that eventually leads to farming. Then farming creates surplus food, which lets people build permanent settlements. And finally, those settlements get complex enough to afford organized religion and, giant monumental temples. Makes sense. Okay, let's dive into this, because that site I mentioned at the very beginning, Göbekli Tepe, it completely flips this entire sequence upside down. There are no houses there, no agricultural tools at all. The people who built it were totally nomadic. So Göbekli Tepe is basically yelling at us that the desire to create a sacred space, like a cathedral on a hill, actually came first. Religion didn't emerge from civilization. It looks like civilization might have emerged from religion. And the absolutely crucial point here is this number, 500. Experimental archaeologists have calculated that it would take a highly coordinated workforce of at least 500 people just to quarry and move one single 15-ton T-shaped limestone pillar at Göbekli Tepe. And honestly, just feeding that many people in one place requires agricultural-scale food management. But remember, this was being done by hunter-gatherers. It literally breaks all the rules. But the timeline isn't just broken at the dawn of history. Let's fast forward a bit and jump over to El Salvador, to an incredible site called Joya de Serén. Back in 600 CE, this was just an ordinary Maya farming village, until it was suddenly buried under 14 separate layers. We're talking 90 centimeters of volcanic ash from the Loma caldera eruption. It was perfectly preserved. It's like a literal flash-frozen snapshot of a random afternoon. And what they found fossilized under all that ash? Yeah, it rewrote the history books again. See, textbooks have always insisted that a highly efficient technique called ridge and furrow farming was introduced by the Spanish in the 1500s. But the reality? The actual fossilized corn plants at Serén proved the Maya were already using that exact technique a full millennium earlier, in 600 CE. Not even close. Section 2. Conquering impossible environments, thriving where we thought they couldn't. This perfectly illustrates just how insanely resourceful human beings really are. Take Nan Madol, for instance, 92 artificial islands built directly on a coral reef, using 750,000 tons of basalt columns, all moved across the open ocean. Or the Garamantes, a literal state-level society thriving right in the middle of the Sahara Desert because they figured out how to tap into a fossil aquifer using 600 kilometers of underground tunnels. And then there's Ciudad Perdida, 169 heavily engineered stone terraces built straight into impossibly steep slopes in the Colombian jungle, complete with this sophisticated drainage system that somehow survived 1,000 years of heavy rains. Which brings us to the Amazon. For 5 centuries, European explorers and historians basically just looked at the Amazon and called it a vast, empty wilderness, completely unsuitable for any large-scale human habitation. But recent LiDAR technology, which basically involves shooting lasers through the dense canopy to map the ground, revealed a totally shocking truth. The jungle wasn't too dense for civilization. The civilization was the jungle. The actual reality of the Amazon is just staggering to think about. We are talking about pyramidal mounds reaching 22 meters high, vast networks of elevated causeways purposefully built above seasonal flood levels, and thousands upon thousands of interconnected structures. This wasn't wild nature. This was a heavily managed, cultivated landscape supporting tens of thousands of people. European colonists thought it was empty wilderness for one incredibly tragic reason. Devastating diseases like smallpox traveled ahead of them along trade networks, wiping out the population before the colonists even made actual contact.
Section 3. Societies without rulers. Scaling up without kings. And this brilliantly illustrates our next big rule breaker. Let's look at Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley. It's an ancient city that housed roughly 40,000 people. But notice the mind-blowing precision here. We're talking about a meticulously planned grid layout. Indoor plumbing connected to covered street sewers that honestly wouldn't be matched until the modern era, and bricks with a strict 1-to-2 ratio that were perfectly standardized across 1,000 kilometers. And get this civilization lasted for 700 years.
But here is the real kicker. Despite standardizing all of this engineering across an area larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined, there is a glaring zero here. There's absolutely zero evidence of a ruling class. No palaces anywhere. No monumental statues of a glorious leader. No weapons caches. Decades of excavation have found absolutely no centralized autocratic ruler whatsoever. It completely defies our basic understanding of how ancient mega-societies scaled up and functioned. How did they do it without a king?
Section 4. Erased from the records. Civilization's history forgot to mention. Let's head over to China, to the absolute anomalies that are Shimao and Sangjingdui. Just think about these crazy discoveries. Shimao features a massive 70-meter stepped pyramid with jade eyes literally embedded into the walls, and grimly, it was built on top of the skulls of captive women. Meanwhile, Sangjingdui yielded these mind-bending artifacts, like a 4-meter-tall bronze tree covered in gold fruit, and these massive heavy gold masks with super bizarre, almost alien-looking protruding eyes. Their bronze casting infrastructure seriously rivaled anything you'd find in ancient Greece or Egypt.
But boom, we hit another huge, glaring zero. Look, China has arguably the most meticulously documented, continuous historical record on the entire planet, right? And yet in over 3,000 years of texts, there is not a single word, not one character, mentioning the pyramid builders of Shimao or the incredibly advanced bronze masters of Sangjingdui. It's like they were entirely, purposefully forgotten. And speaking of vanishing completely, let's look at Akrotiri. Sometime around 1600 BCE, a volcanic eruption on the island of Thera blew its top with a force 4 times that of Krakatoa. It buried this Minoan settlement under 40 meters of ash. And this place was a total marvel of the ancient world. It had 3-story buildings, indoor toilets, and some of the most incredibly vivid, beautiful frescoes in the entire Bronze Age Aegean.
Now, what's really interesting about this place is the chilling mystery the archaeologists found when they finally dug in. It's summed up perfectly. 0 skeletons, 0 human remains. See, unlike Pompeii, the residents of Akrotiri knew the eruption was coming. They packed up all their portable valuables, they literally unhinged and took their doors with them, and they sailed away. And over 3 millennia of history hasn't been able to answer the question, where exactly did this hyper-advanced society actually go? Section 5. What else are we missing? The ground is full of secrets.
It's wild when you look at how randomly we stumbled upon these places. I mean, the most paradigm-shifting discoveries in human history weren't always found through these calculated, massive, university-funded archaeological expeditions. Göbekli Tepe? Found by a shepherd who just happened to notice a weird rock. Joya de Seren was hit by a bulldozer operator trying to clear some land for a grain silo. Sanxingdui was uncovered by 2 random laborers digging a drainage ditch in a brick factory. And Ciudad Perdida? Found by tomb robbers hacking their way through the green hell of the jungle. It really proves that our map of human history is incredibly fragile and deeply, deeply incomplete.
So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take away from today's explainer. The ground beneath us is literally full of secrets. The ocean floor is holding things we haven't even begun to look for yet. If a shepherd's random walk can rewrite the origin of religion, and a rogue bulldozer can rewrite the history of farming, well, it makes you wonder. The next civilization that